do the intro for you and everything else. So.
Okay, cool. So you just want me to
watch anything until you start going off on your own, doing your own thing.
All right.
Let me go talk to Chile.
As you can tell,
let her know you're ready.
Perfect.
I'll be right there.
As you can tell, I'm new at doing this as well. So
We're all learning as to
right?
what we're discussing here.
Oh gosh.
Or are you going off comments, or is it?
Our questions or?
I had my little notepad and then I think I left it in the other room, but now I'm stuck here. I'll go get it in a little while though. But I'm just gonna basically first. Let me look up here.
This is what.
Let's get back to
5-10
that.
minutes-ish.
Yeah, it won't be very long at all. We're just going to be, I figured we can just talk about the results coming in right now. And I'm just going to ask, what are you seeing? Where should we be looking right now? What should we be expecting over the next few hours or so? And then I'll just ask briefly, based on what we're seeing, you're good? All right. They're just going to throw me in a lot of things.
Yeah.
And they're like, do it. And I'm like,
training.
all right, well.
Yeah.
Did you do this in Wisconsin?
I did not. Very different things. I was a GA reporter, so I was out in the field.
Okay.
You've got 5. I can talk about it too.
Got it. All right. Yeah, I was out in the field, so I was one of those guys. It's a very different job than what I do now. So I'm like a breaking news anchor now. So I do breaking news, but for election coverage today, I was we are monitoring election results as it comes in. I'm more jealous. I've been kind of watching these votes come in little by little. You probably heard us talking a little bit there before we came on about my resemblance to Steve Kornacki is what everybody is telling me online today. But yeah, we've been monitoring these results as they come in. We've already had a few races called already, but the big one still has not been called. I'm joined with a couple analysts. Would you like to introduce yourself to everybody joining us online?
Go ahead.
Sure. I'm Kirsten Jeffus. I'm the executive director of the Jefferson County Republican Party.
And I'm Dee Pregliasco. I'm president of the Louisville League of Women Voters, and we're a nonpartisan group. We educate voters. We don't support parties, and we don't support candidates.
Wow, gotcha. All right. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for joining me. I know you're like headed out the door in a little bit, but we want to keep this really short and simple. So the first kind of question I'm going to talk with you guys about is looking at the results we have in right now. And we're actually, I'll let the viewers out there see really quick what we're looking at. Here is the race as it stands right now for governor. Andy Beshear is up 53.5% over Daniel Cameron's 46.5, with just over 50% of the total vote reporting. So seeing those numbers come in, we're seeing kind of some reds and blues populate the screen right now. I can kind of toggle between these and kind of look at which counties are going which way. I can compare it to 2019 and how it looked then. What are some things that we are seeing just from us looking at this map right now? What are we kind of seeing, and what does this mean? What do these numbers mean? Can you interpolate any of this for me?
I'm still curious to see what Western Kentucky is going to do. It's still early. The absentee vote, starts tabulating first, as well as the early vote. So I'm going to watch Western Kentucky, or continue to do that. Also, Northern Kentucky. It looks like Kenton County is still trending blue at the moment. So those are a couple of areas, and also what the spread is in Louisville this year.
Gotcha.
Or in Jefferson County.
Gotcha.
And what I look for is turnout, because we're interested in the turnout being more than it usually is. We're terrible. I mean, I would like 75, 80% turnout, because if people are really interested in having good government, and if they're interested in issues, they ought to be voting, because it's the people in charge who make all these decisions that affect us.
Gotcha. And high turnout typically, which does that particularly go one way or the other when we see higher turnout versus lower turnout? What would that mean in this case, I guess?
I think it's hard to say. It's hard, this is a red state, but we obviously have a Democratic governor. To me, it means that that citizens are engaged. And that's what we're all about, is making sure that citizens are engaged and they're paying attention. So to me, that's critical.
Gotcha. Let's talk a little bit about, I guess, one thing that a lot of people have been talking to me about over the past few weeks, and that's these ads and the money that's been put into this race, right? This is, I believe, the most expensive governor's race in Kentucky history. What does that say about what's on the line here?
Okay. I'll go first with that because I've already said, and maybe you heard me say, the league is against the Citizens United decision that just opened the floodgates for money.
Mm-hmm.
And so what this means is people with lots of money have more say than the guy on the street.
Yeah.
It should be your vote. So we think that that is really polluting politics on both sides. It's not just Republicans, it's not just Democrats, it's both parties have all this money flowing in from the people who can afford it through these PACs. You know, they don't have to reveal who's given them the money. That's not transparency, which is what we should have in a democracy. So we feel very strongly about that.
And what do you think it says that so much money has been thrown into this race?
In this race in particular, Daniel Cameron had a contested primary. On May 18th, he started with $0 in the bank. And Governor Beshear had 4 years to stockpile. The Kentucky Democratic Party did not invest any money in their 2022 races, their midterms last year. So he started. He has spent about $17 million so far in comparison to Daniel Cameron's $5 million.
Yeah, and and we talk about that incumbent advantage so much, especially when it comes to fundraising and gathering resources and support and whatnot. Because, like you said, Daniel Cameron had a contested primary. He had to put a lot of money into that just to get the nomination first, whereas Andy Beshear was basically the shoe-in on the Democrat side. So that's a good point. I like to bring up. There's another thing about incumbent advantage too that I wanted to bring up. If we look, I want to toggle this map right now and show us a few of the different races. So there were only 2 of the races of the 6 down here that we were really looking at today where an incumbent was running, right? One of them was the governor's race. Andy Beshear right now is leading, although the vote total's kind of closing the gap a little bit as more votes come in. So you're right, it's still not over. We look at the Secretary of State race, though, this one for Michael Adams. He was the incumbent here, and he had a huge lead over Buddy Wheatley here, and the AP has actually already called this race. Do you think the incumbent advantage may have had something to do with those results we're seeing in this race?
Well, I'm going to say this. I think it's important to know that Michael Adams has worked very well with everybody.
Yeah.
The league even had him as a speaker at our June convention, the state league. He's worked very bipartisanly. He's done things that have made helped to make our elections secure. We at the league have not necessarily agreed with everything, but he reaches out to people on both sides and everybody to try to make things work. And I've also worked with David Wheatley, who was a representative, and he was a great guy. But I just think the incumbency and his bipartisan efforts and the things involving voting certainly have helped him.
So you're thinking the record speaks for itself there?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes.
That's interesting. I always follow these races, and even not here just in Kentucky. I was up in Wisconsin before that, and that's the most purple state you can be in, right? And I always found it interesting how some races, like the ones we're seeing now, can happen at the same time, but you may have a Republican with a big lead in one race and then a Democrat with a pretty sizable lead in the other. Right. It's always something really interesting to look at. Any last words for either of you ladies before we go? What I guess are our final thoughts before I let you go for the night on how this is turning out? Like I said, we're getting kind of more updates right now on the governor's race as well. Andy Beshear still up with about a 6-point lead right now, but that gap is closing. What are we expecting as we head into the rest of the night?
Matt Bevin won Western Kentucky by 30,000 votes in 2019. So I think watching the totals come in from that region will be telling. But the governor has done a great job leveraging his bully pulpit. I mean, he's traveled around the state. He's taken a lot of credit for not necessarily things he had a lot to do with, but with when he's the one behind the microphone, and it's he can take credit for a lot of the things that the General Assembly has been able to get done, and it reflects well on him.
Which is true with any governor.
Yeah.
Right? Exactly.
So
Well, thanks. I don't want to keep you to any more than you have to. I know you've been here a few hours now, but thank you so much for your
Oh,
input
you're quite
today.
welcome.
I told you it would be painless, super easy,
We
but
appreciate it.
you've been a lot of help
Absolutely.
for us today.
thanks for
So
having us.
on that note, we are going to put the results back on the screen for just a little while I get these two ladies out of here, and we'll be back in just a few minutes.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to hop back in here for a second. Hello, my name is Ward Jallis. I've been joining you throughout the night, breaking down election results as they come in, and I'm going to continue to do that right here on Wave News Now, which we're streaming on Facebook right now. I'm seeing a lot of your comments here. We're watching them come in. If you have any questions about election results or anything as they're coming in, any counties specifically to look at, we're going to be going through some of that in real time right now. I want to take a quick look at the map that we've been looking at. And I know that the story here really all night has been about how Andy Beshear has been able to perform in some of these counties that he narrowly won back in 2019. So with this map that we have right now, I'm actually able to toggle between 2023 and 2019, right? So here is the final result, that full map from 2019 when the governor's race happened, right? So you can see a lot of red there. That's expected. Andy Beshear only won here by about 5,000 votes statewide. And the reason that there's so much red and just so little blue, but Andy Beshear still managed to eke out a very narrow win, is because a lot of his votes came in from these larger counties. Let's zoom in here to the Louisville area, for example. So in Louisville, last election back in 2019, Andy Beshear carried this by 67%. Okay, so this is where a ton of his votes from back in 2019 came from, right? Now, we can also toggle between that and this year's race right now in Louisville with only about 33% of the total vote reporting. Andy Beshear is leading by 72.3%. So he's overperforming here a little bit. And that's kind of the same story that we've been seeing across the board in a lot of the counties that we have been watching. One thing that I wanted to mention, and this is something that I've been talking about all night, especially in races that are expected to be really close, right? Let's see if we can zoom out there. There we go. Is a lot of times these really close races, they're going to come down to what happens in just a few areas, right? And I particularly like to look at the suburbs. The reason I like to look at the suburbs is because it's kind of on the edge of, you have your traditional rural counties, which swing more Republican. You have the urban areas that typically lean Democrat. But a lot of times races are won in the suburbs because that's really the best mix that you have of the general population. Specifically in the Kentucky race for governor, I like to look at three different places when it comes to the suburbs, right? And we're talking about here. We're talking about the Louisville suburban area. So these counties right around here, we're going to be looking at Shelby, Oldham here, Spencer County, Hardin County. These are counties where you would expect Andy Beshear to pick up a good number of votes. Also, the Fayette County suburbs. So Fayette is where Lexington is. Andy Beshear carries Fayette County easily in this race. He did the same thing back in 2019, albeit, as I said, it looks like he's overperforming a little bit here. It's the same story pretty much across the board in these areas. And it's really important to look at these areas, like I said, because they've got this nice mix of votership. So we've actually even selected 5 of these counties in northern Kentucky, across our viewing area and a little bit outside, that we have been looking at. That historically, these 5 counties, I believe, over the past couple decades, have predicted the winner of the Kentucky governor's race. All 5 counties go to the winner every time. Why? It's because these are the counties that are kind of like your swing counties, right? If you win those, you're in good shape. Right now, all 5 of them are going to Beshear. We're talking Warren, Madison, Scott, Kenton, and Campbell. Kenton and Campbell, I want to note, are suburbs of Cincinnati. So those are the suburbs of an urban area, right? So a lot of these blue counties that you're seeing that are filling in, going to Beshear, that's good news for the Beshear team, right? Now, there's a couple of areas that I also wanted to take a look at, right, that I mentioned on air earlier if you were following along. These areas are kind of, I would say, sleeper areas, right? So we talk a lot about what we call the golden triangle here, the triangle between Louisville, Lexington, and Cincinnati. That's where a lot of votes in Kentucky come from because there's just a lot of people that live there. But there's also some other areas that I like to look at. One in particular that we're keeping a close eye on in this election is this area right here. And this is Southwest Kentucky, right? So the reason I'm looking at this area in particular. You've got places like right here in Henderson County where Paducah is, and down in the far southwestern area, you got places like Mayfield, Paducah. You've got these smaller cities. And, this is traditionally Republican territory. Daniel Cameron will likely win most of these counties down here pretty handily, right? But what's interesting when we look at these is that if you compare them back to 2019, for example, you're seeing a slight shift here, right? Particularly in favor of the Democrats, Andy Beshear. Now, that's something that I was following and I was really keeping a close eye on right now, because this is an area that was very hard hit by several natural disasters in the past couple of years. We obviously had that big tornado outbreak in this area a couple of years ago. And that was something that a lot of people were talking about coming into this race right now, talking about, obviously the response by Beshear was praised in this area of the country. He spent a lot of time, money, and resources in this area. And a lot of people wanted to see if that was going to shift a little bit, if that was going to shift some of that support that went to Matt Bevin in 2019 in Andy Beshear's direction. We are kind of seeing some of that right now. Now, whether any of that ties together at this point, that is to be seen, but we still got a little ways to go. So I'm going to look at the total votes in right now. We're at 61% of the vote in right now. So we're over halfway through this total votes that we've got coming in. So we're going to keep an eye on this, right? And as they come in, I'll kind of keep you up to date on where these votes are coming from, what we're seeing. So here's something interesting. Meade County is almost at 100% reporting. I've been watching that because that is a Louisville suburb that went to Matt Bevin in 2019. And unlike the other red counties that we've seen come in across the the state, this one, Daniel Cameron is actually overperforming a little bit. So that's an outlier here, right? So right now, let's take a look at the race as a whole. We've got, there we go. We've got this gap narrowing a little bit, right? So 52.4% Andy Beshear, 47.6% Daniel Cameron. Now, to be fair, we're talking about just under a 5-point lead for Andy Beshear right now. That means he is in good shape, because if we look back at 2019, he won by less than half a percentage point with 100% reporting. Now with 61% reporting, he's leading by almost 5 points. So he's doing at this point better than he was in 2019, and he won in 2019. So that's something that is that's going to be something we're going to be talking about in a little while, is where he was able to build support this year compared to his last race in 2019. Andy Beshear is a very popular governor nationwide. He is a Democratic governor who is an incumbent in a solid red state. That is not something we see a lot of. And recent polling has shown that about 50% of Republicans statewide actually support Andy Beshear. They approve, I shouldn't say support, they approve of Andy Beshear's job, because we've seen time and time again in different races, just because you approve of somebody's job doesn't mean you're going to go vote for them at the polls. So the question coming into tonight was really, is Andy Beshear going to be able to take that approval rating of over 60% statewide and turn that into a victory at the polls? So far, as of right now, with 61% reporting, it looks like maybe he's been able to do that. But it's not over yet. And with 39% of the vote still out there, AP has not made a call yet. So that's worth noting. Now, I did want to say something else. I am monitoring your comments. I'm seeing some people say, what about Henry County? Henry County is one of these suburbs. There we go. There's Henry County. Let's take a look at it right now. Henry County is one of the suburbs of Louisville, kind of between Louisville and Lexington, that we like to keep an eye on right now. Henry County is done. 100% of Henry County is reporting right now. With that being said, if you take a look back at 2019, Matt Bevin had just about 0.8% more support than Daniel Cameron. So Daniel Cameron is slightly underperforming in Henry County. Thanks for asking that question. I can watch your comments as they come in right now and keep an eye on those races. One other thing too, I was just told in my ear from a producer, here we go. Let's see. Fayette County is where Lexington is. I'm looking for Powell County. There's Powell. Powell County. This is a really interesting one we've been keeping an eye on right now. 100% of the vote is reporting in Powell County right now, and Andy Beshear up by 1. Now let's look at 2019. Matt Bevin won this by over 5 points. So that is a huge shift in Andy Beshear's direction. But that just shows you where the support overall has been kind of shifting. And that's really the story across much of the state right now. But that just shows you how close these elections can come. Your vote really matters, and you can see it right here. 1 vote made the difference in Powell County. Now, it is a popular vote statewide that determines this, but that's just very interesting. We've heard a lot about polling in all of this, what polls have said about the race, also what fundraising has said. And I want to break that down a little bit too, because polling in Kentucky has traditionally not been the greatest. I've been doing a lot of reading on this recently. Decision Desk actually did this really interesting study recently where they took 40 polls from the past 8 years or so and looked at all of them across the board and saw which ones were accurate, which ones underestimated the Republican, which ones underestimated the Democrat, whatnot. And in 39 out of the 40 polls that they actually looked through, 39 of them actually underestimated the performance by Republicans. So polling isn't really great in Kentucky traditionally. So we really, coming into this, we knew it was probably going to be close because the polls kind of showed that. But again, we didn't really know how close because it hasn't been the best system to really get an idea of where this race was at. I want to take a look back at the map again. Let's see where we're at now. 62% now reporting. And again, that gap getting a little bit tighter. We're just over 40,000 votes here now. And another thing I want to look at. So if we take a look, there's a lot of different things I can do on this software that we've got here, and it's really awesome. This tool allows us not only to see which counties each candidate is winning, but if I hit this heat button, it'll also let me see which counties each candidate is doing better in. So the darker the blue, the better that Andy Beshear is doing. The darker the red, the better that Daniel Cameron is doing, right? We've got 63% of the vote in right now. And this kind of gives you a better idea, too, on a statewide look of how well each candidate is performing compared to the last governor's race, right? So if I take a look at 2019, so there's a slight shift there. You see that? Some of these counties, particularly you look in this area, look at Bowling Green, Warren County down there, they're getting a little bit more blue, particularly across central Kentucky there. Now, the white counties are the ones that we would call the swing counties. Like I identified those 5 counties that we were talking about earlier. These are the key counties, I say, the ones that traditionally predict the winner of the governor's race. Those back in 2019, they were pretty white there. They were very close, right? I'm looking at Kenton and Campbell here, only 1 point difference. Campbell County, 5 points there, a little bit more. We had Madison County selected. This was 0.3% difference. And people, this is what you hear. Your vote matters, right? This is the results right here for you, right? And then this year, we identified those key counties again. Look at that. The same ones we took off the heat are the same ones that went to Beshear back in 2019. So we're kind of seeing very similar results to what we saw in 2019, maybe even a little bit of an overperformance by Beshear this year so far. But again, we are still waiting on all of the vote counts to come in. We just got another big chunk of votes. Let's zoom out and see what we're looking at here. Okay, 63% now reporting. We are down to 68%. We just got a huge chunk just then. And now we're back to about 5-6 point lead here. So again, some of the same stories here. And if we turn on the heat map again, here you go. We're starting to get some of these votes we were talking about earlier in Southwest Kentucky. Some of these counties like Henderson, where Paducah is. You can take a look at the differences between 2019 and 2023. And you see in 2019, Beshear carried this, 51.3% of the vote. In 2023, it was a different story. He had 56.9% of the vote here. So this was a big jump for him. 5 points is big in election standards, right? So he got a lot more support. Now there isn't aren't a whole lot of people that live there. You see how many the vote totals that are coming in, but he's still leading by about 1,600 votes here. Now let's talk about where all the votes for Beshear are, right? The ones that he carries by a lot, right? I mean, we're talking his home county, Jefferson County, here in Louisville. Beshear is carrying this right now, 56% in 71.3%. He's leading Daniel Cameron here by 67,000 votes. That's huge. Statewide, he's only leading by, let me do some math here in my head, by about 60,000. So he's leading by 67,000 here. Take Jefferson County out, and this race looks a lot different, right? So that just shows you the influence these bigger counties have, right? So we're going to continue to monitor this. I'm going to take a quick break here while I can get some more stuff together for you. I'm going to keep breaking down these election results. Again, no one has been called in the governor's race right now. We have gotten a few results. The Secretary of State race and the Attorney General race, those have already been called by the AP. They're both going to the Republicans in this case, but we're still waiting on that governor's race call. Until then, I am going to sign off, and I will be back in just a few minutes.
This is Wave News, Decision 2023.
Coverage, I'm John Bowl.
And I'm Myra Ansari. Polls in Kentucky, they have closed, and the results, they are coming in. NBC News has called Kentucky's governor's race. Let's take a look at those numbers there. Governor Andy Beshear, the incumbent, according to NBC News, has called this race with 52% of the votes against Daniel Cameron, 48% of the votes. So good news for Andy Beshear.
Yeah, it's been running at about a 4% margin so far for Beshear. When they got past about the 65% total vote counting turnout, NBC made the call, first one to call Andy Beshear, even called it before AP. So we want to get to David Mattingly, who is live with the Beshear camp, and find out how they're feeling about this.
I was thinking that when we would have one of the major networks calling this race, this room would erupt. Apparently, that word is still just trickling around the room right now by word of mouth because NBC is not on the monitors here. Well, what we're seeing a lot of smiles in the room, a lot of people coming closer and closer to the stage here, waiting for Andy Beshear and his family to take the stage right up there with a victory speech tonight. A lot of people wanting to see if he could repeat that miracle of 4 years ago of becoming a Democratic governor in a heavily Republican state. According to NBC, that has happened. So this room full of supporters here will have a lot to cheer about when they walk out here. As of right now, everyone, the mood here has been up all night because Beshear has been leading. He has been up in the count all night. It wasn't ever really that close that people were thinking he might lose. They were very encouraged. And now with word.
Okay, we are losing David here. I can tell you that the reason for encouragement in the Beshear camp is he's been outperforming the metrics from 4 years ago when he only won by 5,000 votes. For instance, Jefferson County, he had 67% of the vote 4 years ago. He's running at 70% plus, outperforming in Fayette, outperforming in some of the Republican counties as well. So they knew that they had a good roadmap here to victory tonight.
Absolutely. And of course, his popularity in the state and across the country, a lot of eyes have been on Kentucky to see how it unfolds tonight. We want to go now to Mark Stevens, who is with Cameron's group tonight. Mark, is word spreading out there yet?
Watchdog.
No, actually, word is not spreading here. They're actually still doing candidate announcements for the down ballot, the statewide races. We've been hearing, I think, winning acceptance speeches from the state auditor as well as the Secretary of State. The trouble is that, at least on the monitors here, they're not watching NBC, so they're continuing to celebrate the races that they have won. Now, we have been watching those results, as David and John have been mentioning, some of the key counties in this race that Beshear was able to keep flipped in his column. Kenton County, the Cincinnati suburbs, Floyd County, and eastern Kentucky, as well as running up the numbers in Fayette and Jefferson County. So we're still waiting for official word from Daniel Cameron as well as the Republican Party. They're not working on it yet. We may be coming to him. No, I don't believe so. I think they're going to have Russell Coleman giving his acceptance speech. So still waiting for a reaction here at the Republican Party headquarters. And I can't hear you guys. I may have lost you, so I'm going to throw it back to you just in case. Reporting live from Republican Party headquarters, downtown Louisville, Mark Stevens, Wave News.
Okay, Mark, thank you. So we have the very same scenario playing out as 4 years ago. Republicans winning all of the other major contests except for the top job.
And then, of course, as we've been mentioning, NBC calling Governor Beshear winning the race here in Kentucky. Ward Jollis has been breaking down all of the numbers coming in through our new mapping system that we have. Ward, tell us about what you're seeing, the trends.
Yeah, John, Myra, you were right on the money when you said we're seeing kind of a repeat of what we saw 4 years ago as far as all 6 of these races we are tracking have been going. So NBC News, they're calling the race right now for Andy Beshear. What we're looking at right now, these are the numbers from the AP. As of right now, the Associated Press has not called this race yet, but of course we're an NBC affiliate. We've called this race for Andy Beshear. I do want to talk a little bit about what we've been mentioning all night, where Andy Beshear was able to build some of this support that he needed to come out on top tonight. So just looking at the state as a whole, right now, Andy Beshear up by about 50,000 votes or so, right? 73% is reporting. So obviously a really huge chunk there. If we look back at 2019, he only won the race statewide by 5,000. So the question immediately is where is he making up some of the support? How did he end up from 0.5% to sitting right around 5 points with 3/4 of the vote in, right? So let's talk about that. I talked a little bit earlier about the suburbs. You hear a lot in close races in any state, really. What are the suburbs saying? They're that edge between the rural areas and the urban areas, right? That a lot of times can tell you what's happening in a race. We were keeping an eye on these 5 specific counties up here, the Cincinnati suburbs, Kenton and Campbell, around Fayette County, Scott and Madison County. Those are the Lexington suburbs. And then we've also been kind of keeping an eye on the Louisville suburbs as well, and one county down here, Warren County, where Bowling Green is, right? So these are what we would call our 5 key counties in this race, because historically they have predicted the winner of the governor's race in Kentucky over the past few decades, really. If these 5 counties go towards one candidate, historically, that candidate has gone on to win the race as a whole. And as we're looking right now at these live vote totals with 72% in, Andy Beshear carrying all 5 of those counties. Before I throw it back to you guys, I want to show you one more thing, and that is what the distribution looks like. This is a heat map of where the votes came in 2019 for the governor's race. The more red the map is, the more Republican, the more blue, the more Democrat. If we compare that this year, you see a little bit more blue filling in all around here, maybe some over here in the Warren County area, over here in McCracken, in the Paducah, Mayfield area. Andy Beshear was able to build some support there that he didn't have in 2019. And as we can see, if you're looking at these totals as a whole with 75% in, that made all the difference in this race. I'll send it back to you guys.
That's very interesting. Thank you, Ward. So Joe Biden had a 68% disapproval rating last time we checked the polling here, while Andy Beshear had a 60% approval number in Kentucky, 43% approval rating just in the Republican Party. So you saw that come to fruition in the results as it's running so far tonight.
And you saw a lot of those ads late here in the last coming of weeks kind of ramp up, associating Beshear with Biden and then Trump with Cameron. So we saw things kind of heat up there.
And a lot of people I'm watching nationally, like CNN tonight, and they're trying to say, well, does this bode well for Joe Biden in the next election? Because since the year 2000, 5 straight presidential elections, whoever won the governor's race in Kentucky the following year, that same party won the presidential race. So we'll see how that'll play out.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of national media outlets here talking exactly about that. All right, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to bring you Governor Andy Beshear's acceptance speech live here once that gets started. So stay with us.
All right, I want to cut back in here with a major update we have in the race for governor here in Kentucky. You just heard us talking about it live on air a couple minutes ago. NBC News right now is projecting that Andy Beshear, the incumbent, has won the governor's race here in Kentucky. So obviously this is a huge update. This is the race we've been following all day here at Wave News. And so I wanted to give you that update really quick. I'm not going to take too much time, but I do want to go through a few of the counties, if you missed our coverage a few minutes ago, that this really made the difference in, right? I mean, we're talking about these suburban counties. I love this map that we have up right now because this is what we call our heat map, right? And it gives us an idea of where the votes came in statewide from for each candidate. So the more blue these counties are, you can see there's Jefferson County there, Fayette, Warren here. The more blue they are, typically the more support you're seeing from the Democrats. The more red, the more support they showed to the Republicans, right? And if you look at this year's map and compare it back to 2019, it's a little different. You can see a lot of these areas over here Some of these areas here in Eastern Kentucky, some over here in Western Kentucky that we talked about, I was watching that closely. They are now leaning a little bit more blue. And I think that is why we've seen the difference in the vote totals here. You'll remember back in 2019, Andy Beshear won by less than half a percentage point, only about 5,000 votes. He still won, but he was only up by 5,000 votes, right? If you take a look here, he's up by, I mean, we're talking about a margin of almost 7 points here, right? So, I mean, this is a big difference from 2019. It may not look like it, but this is a huge difference here. If you go into a few of these counties we've been talking about all day, right? So let's look here in Jefferson County. Let's zoom in a little bit so I can kind of show you this. In Jefferson County right now with almost 80% reporting, Andy Beshear is winning 72% of the vote here. That is huge. There are a lot of people that live in Jefferson County, and that made a really big difference in this race today. Andy Beshear is leading Daniel Cameron here by 97,000 votes. For reference, back in 2019, Andy Beshear won this county with 67% of the total vote. So that is a 4-point jump, almost a 5-point jump. And while that may not, 5%, you may say, Ward, that's not that much. 5% in a county like Jefferson County, and we're talking tens of thousands of votes here, right? And that is going to make a huge difference. Now let's zoom out a little bit. Let's see, can we zoom out? There we go. Let's zoom into the Lexington area now, because this is an area we don't talk a lot about here in Louisville unless we're talking about elections, because a lot of these counties swing blue. Now let's take a look right here in Fayette County. This was another, I mean, this is just the story of the night here. Andy Beshear overperforming 71.8% this year. In 2019, he only carried 65.5. Still a big margin, but nothing like he did this year. I mean, we're talking about a 6% increase, and that made all the difference. Even in these suburban counties, we're looking at around Fayette County. Andy Beshear was very close here in 2019. He pulled away a little bit, almost 10 points here in Scott County. That's one of our key counties we've been looking at. Let's look down here in Madison County. Madison County, Andy Beshear up 51.7%. Take a look back at 2019. Only 49%. Same story. And really, I mean, I could go through. I know a lot of people asking, can you look at this county? Can you look at this county? We've got almost, let me switch back there. We've got, 80% reporting here. And this margin is just, at the end of the day, it's just too big of a gap to overcome for if you're Daniel Cameron. Even with some of these counties not even reporting votes yet, there's just not enough votes there to overcome this gap that we're seeing. And for that reason, we've had NBC News call this race now. We have now seen CNN has recently called this just within the past couple minutes. I'm looking at CNN has now called this race for Andy Beshear. It's looking really favorable if you're the Democrats right now. Where it's not looking so favorable, though, and I think this is something that we have this has really blown my mind being from Wisconsin, and I'm originally from South Carolina. I didn't expect something like this. Is you're seeing a split here among voters in Kentucky. A lot of Republican voters voting straight Republican, except for the governor's race. Now, why is that? That's a good question. I've never been anywhere where I've seen something like that, but that made all the difference in this race. Because if you look at any other race, let's take a look back at the map. You take a look at any other race, we're talking about Secretary of State. They've called this race already for Michael Adams. I mean, look at the difference there in the blue counties to the red, right? It's just night and day difference. And they've called that for the Republican. Now let's look at Attorney General. Same story, right? So you're seeing all of these Republicans carry each statewide race, except for the governor's race. That is something exceptional. And we talked a lot about Andy Beshear being a very popular governor. He has traditionally been able to work across party lines. That's what he says that he brings to the table. He has been praised for his ability to work in a co-partisan way or a bipartisan way. He also has been praised for his response to natural disasters in Kentucky. That's another thing that, especially in southwestern Kentucky, he got a lot of praise for during his term in office. And he was able to carry that favorability into this race tonight, and that really made all the difference. We saw not only a performance similar to what he did in 2019, but he was able to even push it a little bit further and extend that lead to a comfortable margin where we're not even at 9 o'clock yet, and they've called the race for Governor Beshear. So we're going to keep following this tonight. I'm going to step away for just a second. We've got a lot to talk about. We're expecting to hear from Governor Beshear here in in a few minutes. His acceptance speech. We're also waiting to hear from Daniel Cameron. We've been touching base with our live crews at both parties. It seems like the news is still kind of spreading right now. And so as we get those speeches and we hear from these candidates after this result tonight, we'll bring that to you live, both on air and online. So stick with us. I'm going to keep the map up for a second and just give you a look at kind of where things stand as votes come in. We're at 80% reporting right now. We're expecting just about 20%. Oh, and look at that. We just a second ago, AP called this race. The AP is now projecting Andy Beshear is the winner in Kentucky. So now we have NBC. We now have NBC and we have NBC and CNN and NBC all projecting Beshear. So Beshear is about to step on in just a second. I'm actually going to toggle over to the Beshear camp right now, and we're going to show you live as Beshear gets ready to speak. I'm going to step away from the mic, and we'll have a crew there to bring that to you live here in just a second. I'm going to jump back in on this live stream here for just a second because we want, right now you're seeing the crowd at the Beshear camp right now. We're expecting he will be speaking soon after winning the race for governor. But I also want to show you another thing we're watching. This is the Cameron camp right now, and they are announcing his loss is what I'm told right now. So we're going to listen in. Here is Daniel Cameron approaching the mic right now. We are going to listen in to his speech.
Well, that didn't turn out exactly how I wanted it to. Well, look, it has been such an honor to run as the Republican nominee for governor and to run alongside someone who is the pride of Henderson County and the best dressed man I know. The fact that he runs a dry cleaners might have something to do with that. But Robbie Mills, it's been an honor. Thank you. I promised the governor I'd be brief, so I'll be brief tonight and say thank you all. Thank you so much for your willingness and commit to this campaign and this effort, an effort that was ultimately about our kids and our grandkids. You know, and you know, oftentimes when I'd go into counties and communities, I would bring the best campaigner I know with me, my wife, Mackenzie Cameron. Doesn't she look radiant tonight, I think? But it's been an honor to be her husband. We've got a 22-month-old at home, and we've got another one on the way next spring. But whether it was Mackenzie or Vicki Mills or all of you all here, again, this was about future generations. And as I called the governor to congratulate him, I know from his perspective and from all of our perspectives that we all want the same thing for our future generations. We want a better Commonwealth, one in which it can ultimately be a shining city on a hill, a model and example for the rest of the nation to follow. And so as I did with Governor Beshear, I want all of us to think about what these next few decades will look like. And I ask that you pray for Governor Beshear and his team and for all of our Commonwealth. Because at the end of the day, win, lose, or draw, what ultimately matters is that we know that Christ is on the throne. Thanks, Mac. But that's what Mackenzie and I will return to. We'll return to trying to be the hands and feet of Christ. I know that you all will as well. We'll try to instill those principles in Theodore and the child that will be named at some point. We're still trying to figure that name out. But that's what it's about here on this earth, about leaving it better than you found it and giving a better future for your kids and your grandkids. So let us continue in that effort. Let us continue in that work. I want to thank my campaign team. I'm not going to name all of them, but I want to give a shout out to Terry Carmack, my big brother. Brandon Moody, who has been with me since the 2019 campaign. And the final member of the Troika, Scott Jennings. Thank you, my friend. And of course, I've got to give a shout out to my mom. who is a prayer warrior. So thank you to all of you. May God bless you, and God bless Kentucky. Thank you so much.
That was Daniel Cameron. His concession speech just now. We're going to keep following this. He said a lot there. He said, obviously he started off, he said, this wasn't the way that we expected this to turn out. But before we talk too much more on that, I'm going to turn it back over to the Beshear camp now, where we're expecting Andy Beshear to give his speech after the AP and several outlets now calling the race for him. He has won re-election. We've been reporting this all night. We're going to keep following this. Keep an eye on this watch party here at the Beshear camp. And again, we're expecting him to be speaking here relatively soon. But until then, I'm gonna sign off here for a second.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Looks like Governor Beshear is getting ready to take the stage now. Let's listen in.
Thank you, Kentucky! Today, our Commonwealth came together. Democrats, Republicans, and Independents, and elected the team that puts Kentucky families first. Folks, we have gotten a lot done in our first 4 years. Record economic investment, the lowest unemployment ever, record budget surpluses. But there is so much more to do, and because of you, we are going to make that happen. As a teacher, I see the problems that we face through the lens of the kids in our classrooms. So we have to work together to make sure that all of our kids have everything that they need, because the future of our booming economy, it's in our classrooms today. I try to tell them, when you attack public education in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, you will lose. There are so many thanks to give tonight. So many of you played such an important role in this victory. First, I got to thank the people of Kentucky for giving us another chance. Next, I got to thank my family, the people who made sacrifices so I could do this. Everybody on our campaign staff who helped guide us here. If you volunteered, if you knocked on a door, if you gave $1, you are part of this win. And last, but certainly not least, is the governor. Who chose a teacher as his running mate. Kentucky, it has not been an easy 4 years, but I watched him up close lead with empathy and compassion. I watched as Andy treated every Kentucky family like they were his own. And I watched him prove that it doesn't matter your zip code, your political party, or anything else, that he was going to fight for you because you are a Kentuckian. It is my pleasure to introduce your friends, and our governor for 4 more years, Andy Beshear.
Thank you, Kentucky! Tonight, Kentucky made a choice. A choice not to move to the right or to the left, but to move forward for every single family. A choice to reject Team R or Team D and to state clearly that we are one Team Kentucky. A choice of Jack Harlow over Sarah Huckabee Sanders. And tonight, the people of Kentucky elected me as just the third two consecutive term governor in our history. But folks, this wasn't my win. This was our victory. It was a victory that sends a loud, clear message. A message that candidates should run for something and not against someone. That a candidate should show vision and not sow division. And a clear statement that anger politics should end right here and right now. Just look at what we were up against. 5 super PACs. My opponent's super PAC. Mitch McConnell's super PAC. Rand Paul's super PAC. The Club for the Road. The Republican Governors Association. All running ads full of hate and division. And you know what? We need them all at the same time. This election shows who we are as Kentuckians. We are a proud people who take care of each other. We believe in the golden rule that says we love our neighbor as ourselves. And the parable of the Good Samaritan that says we are all each other's neighbors, no exceptions. Our neighbors aren't just Democrats. They're not just Republicans. They're not just independents. Every single person is a child of God, and they are all our neighbor. We get through the hard times, and we get through them together. We get to the good times, and we get to them together. And wow, are we getting to them. Kentucky is on a historic win streak. The 2 best years of economic development in the history of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. We're building the Brent Spence Companion Bridge without tolls. We're 4-laning the entire Mountain Parkway. And we're pushing I-69 forward so fast that Indiana's scrambling to catch up. We're bringing clean drinking water to our counties, and we are running high-speed internet access to every home in Kentucky. We're building the 2 biggest battery plants on planet Earth. And the cleanest, greenest recycled paper mill in this country. We have record high budget surpluses and record low unemployment. We created almost 50,000 new jobs, $27.8 billion in new private sector investments. So tonight, I stand here excited and optimistic about what we're going to do these next 4 years together. next 4 years, it's time for a couple things. First, it's time to get our educators the big pay raise they deserve. It's time for universal pre-K for every Kentucky child. We're going to keep attracting new jobs and new industries, building our workforce, building the Kentucky we have always dreamed of. And it's amazing that we're here because we have been through a lot together. Devastating tornadoes in the west, historic flooding in the east, and after each, I made a promise that I would help rebuild every home and every life. And thanks to the people of Kentucky, and thanks to this election, we're going to see that promise through. Tonight to continue to be a governor who serves all our people, regardless of your party and regardless of who you voted for. These next 4 years, we have an opportunity to come further together. This is our chance to build that Commonwealth we have always dreamed of, to stop the fighting, to push away the division, to recognize that we have more that unites us that can ever pull us apart, and that the opportunity right in front of us is more promising than at any time in our lifetimes. I have a lot of thank yous. First, to my parents. To Steve and Andy Beshear, thank you for all your support, your service, and your leadership. I love you. To my wife, Brittany. And to my kids, Will and Lyle. You are the reason I do this. You're the reason I do everything. I love you all so much. Hadley is here tonight. She is a brave young woman who came forward to share her story, to speak for so many that couldn't speak for themselves, and because of her courage, this Commonwealth is going to be a better place, and people are going to reach out for the help they need. Thank you. Thanks to my close friends here tonight, and I just wanted to take a minute to recognize that we lost some incredible people recently who stood on a similar stage with us just 4 years ago. I know they're smiling down. I know they're so pleased at where we're going. And I know they know that we love them and that we will see them again. I want to say thank you to every volunteer and field organizer that did the hard work of knocking doors. The entire campaign staff and my campaign manager, Eric Myers, who ran a perfect race. And I want to say a huge thank you to the official Commonwealth of Kentucky staff. Not just everyone in the governor's office, but every single state employee. that they do every day is why we are at this special place in our history. I love serving on Team Kentucky with each and every one of those state employees. And we have an opportunity now, not for 4, but for 8 years that will set up decades of prosperity. I know that every day I have left as governor is special. That every day we have left working together is a day to improve the lives of our fellow Kentuckians. I love this Commonwealth. And I'm going to work as hard as I can for each and every one of you. So from the Beshear family to every Kentucky family, we love you, good night, and God bless.
Well, there you have it. That was Governor Andy Beshear giving his celebratory speech after several outlets this evening have called the race in Kentucky for Governor Andy Beshear. He's winning re-election tonight. You just heard his speech there. I want to touch on a couple different things that he said. He said he will serve all people regardless of party and regardless of who you voted for. He pledged to continue his work over the next 4 years, the work he's been doing over the past 4 years. He says he pointed to several different accomplishments during his time in office. He talked about record economic development over the past 4 years, the building of the 2 largest battery plants across the globe, his record on infrastructure, education, his moves to expand high-speed internet access to rural Kentuckians, and of course, as we mentioned earlier, his response to the natural disasters that have plagued Kentucky over the past 4 years as well, specifically that 2021 tornado outbreak in southwest Kentucky. His response to those disasters and also his record on those different aspects in this race and his time in office, those helped carry him across the finish line tonight. And you saw him talk a lot about those different things there tonight. So it has been quite the eventful night here. We have been keeping an eye on all of these races. We heard from Daniel Cameron just a little while ago, and you know, he had in his concession speech, which was very you know, it was very graceful. Both of their speeches were, you know, both of them gave very emotional, tearful speeches, especially when Andy Beshear thanked his family members. You saw him tear up a little bit there. And I think that emotion is what a lot of people were saying was the reason they were going out and voting for him. He felt like a real person, is what I saw a lot of people commenting online about, and was able to connect with a lot of voters on both sides of the aisle. We've seen that as these results have come in. And speaking of which, I'm going to put it back over on the map now, just to give you an update. We have 87% of the total vote reporting now. Again, the AP, along with NBC News, have both confirmed that Andy Beshear will win re-election when the votes are all counted. He will serve another 4 terms in office here in Kentucky. We talked a lot about how he was able to pull this off, right? So he expanded his victory from 2019, right? So this was 2019 that we're looking at now on your screen. He only won by 5,000 votes statewide. I mean, this is a state that voted overwhelmingly for Donald Trump the very next year, the Republican. Over 20 points Donald Trump won Kentucky by just a year after this. And now, just 3 years after Donald Trump carried this state by a tremendous amount, Andy Beshear, the Democrat incumbent, carried the state by 5 points right now. 5 points is what we're looking at. And we talk about how he was able to do that, where he was able to make up some of that support to give him a more comfortable lead this year as compared to 2019. He was pretty comfortable all night tonight. You saw that at his watch party. The spirits were high. This was a lot more comfortable. I mean, they called the race before 9 o'clock this year, so this was, I think we expected it to be close given what happened in 2019. And while 5 points, you can argue, is relatively close from a political standpoint, he was pretty comfortable this year. So let's talk about where some of this happened. I know I'd pointed this out earlier. We were talking about these 5 key counties. This is interesting. Bowling Green right now with 52% of the vote reporting. Daniel Cameron is actually up there right now. But if we look at the other 5 key counties, you see these are the ones that historically have predicted the winner of the general election in Kentucky, the Kentucky governor's race. And Andy Beshear has claimed 4 of the 5 so far. Now we're still waiting on some of the votes to come in. 14% are still yet to be counted, but it will be interesting to see if the same happens this year, if Andy Beshear is able to carry all 5 of those counties. But I did want to mention a little bit. Let's zoom out to the state as a whole. And let's look at the heat map, right? So this gives us an idea of where the support for each candidate was, right? So this map gives you an idea of where Beshear had a lot of support, where he didn't have as much support. If you look at some of these key counties we've been following, we're talking Jefferson, Fayette County here, in the Lexington suburbs here, Franklin, that's where Frankfort is. These are the counties that were Democratic strongholds in 2019, and they continued to look that way this year. I mean, the margins here are insane. And when you look at these counties, you have to keep in mind that a lot of the population in Kentucky sits in these counties. And when Andy Beshear is winning them by over 70%, I mean, that gave him the boost that he needed to really get across the threshold of victory this year. Another area I wanted to take a look at was up here. Let's see if I can get up there. Northern Kentucky. There we go. So here's I did want to look at Northern Kentucky because we were looking at some of these counties up here I mentioned. These are the Cincinnati suburbs. These were another couple counties, Kenton and Campbell County up here. They are 2 counties that historically have gone to the winner. This is a Republican stronghold typically. And Andy Beshear carried both of these counties. And that is something that not many other Democratic candidates can say they have done in Kentucky. I'm just curious. Let's look at these other races that we're checking. And you can tell the difference is night and day here. The Republicans carry these counties typically. And looking statewide, let's look if we can zoom out there. There we go. I mean, statewide, look at the difference between the race for attorney general versus the governor's race. I mean, it's night and day, right? I want to take off the heat there. So you can see, look at all the blue counties that Andy Beshear won and all the red ones that Cameron won. And then look at these other races. I mean, it's, in some cases, look at the Secretary of State race. Michael Adams had over 60% of the vote statewide. That means a lot of Republicans were voting straight party lines, except for when it came to the governor's race. And that is what we have been talking about over and over again. Governor Andy Beshear is one of the most popular Democratic governors in the country right now. He has over a 60-point approval rating. And that really carried over into this race we saw today. We mentioned before we were going into this that Andy Beshear had almost half of the Republican base here in Kentucky actually saying that they were approving of the job that he has done over the past 4 years. That's not something we see a whole lot of when it comes to these other races, right? Typically in most races, you're going to see Republicans vote straight party line Republican, Democrats vote straight Democrat. But when it comes to this specific race, Andy Beshear was able to somehow bridge the divide here. And this is, of course, obviously a huge deal when we're talking about the upcoming 2024 race as well, because historically, Kentucky, the winner of the governor's race, has predicted the winner of the presidential race the following year. So as we get around to 2024, Joe Biden looks likely to have a rematch with Donald Trump, although, that is not for certain yet. It looks like it is going to be that way. It's going to be really interesting to see if that trend continues. Now, one thing worth noting here is that while we can compare apples and oranges, the governor's race in Kentucky to the presidential race as a whole, you can't really compare the candidates in these cases, really. I mean, Daniel Cameron was, by all means, he was gung-ho a Trump Republican. He was endorsed by President Trump. He was a close protege of Mitch McConnell. He had a lot of support on the national scale from the Republican base. And as you heard Andy Beshear mention a few minutes ago, he had lots of support from super PACs as well, these Republican super PACs that were helping him fund his campaign. Really, these sources of funding that were coming from all over the country. The whole Republican base was behind Daniel Cameron. But the one big thing that is different when you look at Joe Biden and Andy Beshear is Andy Beshear tried to distance himself from Joe Biden. Just a few days ago, we heard Andy Beshear say, when he was asked by a reporter out in an event, you're getting compared a lot by Daniel Cameron to Joe Biden. What do you have to say about that? And Andy Beshear's response was, this isn't about what's happening in the White House. This is about what's happening in the houses of Kentucky. So very clearly, Andy Beshear was trying to distance himself from Joe Biden in this race, and it likely helped him. Joe Biden's approval rating right now is in the 30s compared to Beshear's nearly double that in the state of Kentucky. So that was a really key part of this race. Daniel Cameron really honed in over the past few months on the relationship between Joe Biden and Governor Andy Beshear. He was hoping that that connection would ring true with Republican voters here in Kentucky. He was hoping that that connection would convince Republicans not to vote for Andy Beshear by grouping him together with an unpopular president right now. It did not work. It just did not work this year. Daniel Cameron, who was paired well with Donald Trump, he frequently put out there on ads and whatnot on television that he was endorsed by Donald Trump. He supported Donald Trump. He would continue to support Donald Trump. That did not help him win, even in a solid race like Kentucky. You can see the numbers here. Kentucky traditionally goes solid red, right? In most races. This is one that just did not happen. So I'm going to keep this up for a little while. I'm going to continue to allow people to watch these votes as they come in. We're really only waiting on one more county now over here in Pike County. I'm not really sure what's going on over there, but we'll continue to keep an eye on the results as they come in. Again, Andy Beshear holding about a 5-point lead over Daniel Cameron. The AP has called this race. NBC News has called this race. Just about every outlet has now called this race. Andy Beshear will win re-election. He will serve 4 more years as governor of the state of Kentucky in what was a very exciting night, a very exciting race here for both camps, quite frankly. But with that being said, we've heard from both candidates now. I'm going to leave the vote totals up for a little while so we can continue to look at it. We will have much more coverage on this coming up at 11 o'clock with, if you missed those speeches, we're going to have sound from both Andy Beshear and Daniel Cameron that we'll be able to listen to. That's coming up on Wave News at 11. But for now, I'm going to sign off, and I'll be back with you in just a little bit.